everyone, it's Alex, and welcome to the Everyday Stories podcast, where I talk to the people you know and you don't know about the stories that define them. Today, we're talking to Lauren Boone, an Emmy Award-winning producer who graduated with a BA in Journalism and Media Studies and as a Division I athlete from Rutgers University. Since then, Lauren has spent her professional career at MSNBC and NBC Sports as a booking producer. Lauren launched Shimmer Communications in 2025 with a goal of tackling the new media environment in a world of podcasts, YouTube, streaming, broadcasts, and whatever tomorrow may bring. Today, we're talking to Lauren about her time as a booking producer, her transition to launching her own communications company, and the current state of media. Big topics.
Sounds very
today.
official.
Welcome to the podcast, Lauren.
Thanks for having me.
Lauren and I met because I swam at Rutgers, you dove at Rutgers, and together we bonded over our love for journalism and media studies because that's what we both majored in.
Yes, that's true.
And now we're both on this podcast. Crazy. Media.
Living
wild.
in a crazy world.
So Lauren, the first thing I wanted to ask you was about your time as a booking producer at MSNBC, and then also, for those who don't know, that you got your Emmy as a booking producer working at the Olympics for Tokyo.
Yes.
So
Beijing 2022.
For Beijing 2022 Winter Olympics. Please walk me through your experience as a booking producer at MSNBC and then also your time as a booking producer for the Olympics.
Oh boy. So basically, when you enter the broadcast world and news, media, cable TV, everyone on the production side goes in as a production assistant. Mm-hmm. And from there, it's like you're trying to work up, you're trying to do the next thing. I wanted to be a booking producer because I was a booking intern and I liked talking to people and meeting new people and finding people to put on TV. Mm-hmm. And so the first night that it was just me, the full-time booking producers were off, and it was the Florida condo collapse in 2021 where where literally the entire building, hundreds of people died. It was terrible. And in that situation, like in breaking news, it is all hands on deck. Like everyone's hair is on fire. Everyone's yelling at each other. And it was, I remember because it was Miami and there was one other county where it actually happened. And they said on a call, get the mayor. I got the mayor of Miami. And I was like, okay, they're confirmed. Like, they're ready. All good. And then we get on the next call. And I told them that. And they were like, that's the wrong mayor. Oh. I was like, okay.
So what mayor did you need to get?
It was a smaller town.
A different mayor.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was a very small county right next to Miami, but within, like, Miami County.
Oh, okay.
Like, it was that city mayor.
Got it.
So on all, like, the national news, it was basically like, oh, this condo collapsed, like, in Miami, basically Miami. Yeah. So that's what I just assumed to do. And I was wrong. So, I know. So then it's like, that was the first, like, learn the hard way, thrown into the fire.
Yeah.
But it was fine. Like, it's breaking news. Typically people understand. Like, it's kind of weird in the news industry because when you're producing it, you almost forget that it's real life. So it's like hundreds of people just died. I'm panicking about who to put on TV. So there's a lot that made me learn a lot of perspective that night. But I had to go back and just say, like, we have to stand down, got the other mayor, everything was okay in terms of the live production.
Yeah.
And afterwards, it was like you kind of come down from the adrenaline of, like, a live show, and it's like, wow, like, that just happened to real people. And from my point of view, it, like, as sad as it was, it's like I had a role in putting the voices that mattered on TV. So that's basically when I like fell in love with the job.
And to just like dumbed down version.
Yes.
What a booking producer is.
A booking producer. So basically, you're your own booking producer. You booked me as a guest on this podcast. So I was booking for Brian Williams on MSNBC. He was the anchor. I reached out to the mayor, asked them if they were available. They said yes, did all the Skype IDs or Zooms or however you have them connect, and then they joined the show at the specific time. So it's basically you get any guest on the show.
Got it.
That makes sense.
And how do you find these people? Like when there is breaking news and you have to find like very specific people, does MSNBC just have a list of contacts that you can pull from, or do you really have to like scour the internet and be like a detective?
Both. So it's like there's dozens of paid contributors who mostly are political. It's like we have one aviation expert, or like they have one of those just in case for those breaking news where it's like you have their contacts immediately. And once you're on the show, everyone's saved. But there are some times where it's like there's breaking news in the smallest county that makes it a national story, and you have to go digging. Like I've booked people just from DMing them on Instagram.
You're like, hey,
Yeah.
so you want to be on live national news? Oh my gosh. And you book people from that?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I literally will DM them and be like, hey, like, and it's from my personal account. I'm just like, hey, like, I'm a producer at MSNBC. I think you'd be great to talk to about XYZ. And they either say yes or no.
Who's the most interesting person that you've booked?
Oh, geez. Interesting.
You can list off
an
like
interesting
multiple
word.
people.
Like, famous people is one thing. Interesting's different. Famous people, just from MSNBC, Simone Biles was on, which was incredible. Arnold Schwarzenegger was on.
Arnold Schwarzenegger? Why was he on?
So he went to Auschwitz and is like big on anti-hatred. So his grandfather was a Nazi soldier, and now he fights against hatred and whatnot.
Oh.
Right. An amazing story.
Yeah.
Amazing story. I remember he was like playing chess on his phone.
During the live?
No, just before.
Just
before. Like, we were like, okay, it's time to go. He's like, one more move. I was like, what?
What about people that we don't know?
Okay. My absolute favorite, his name is John Noltner.
Noltner.
Yes.
Okay.
He is a peace photographer. So he sold his house in 2020, and him and his wife bought an RV, and he has traveled the country. He photographs people. He asks people what peace means to them, what do they want to say in like times of crisis, what's important to them. It really depends on the topic. Like, he's been in Minneapolis when George Floyd was killed. He went down to the border. He's been in like water reservoirs that are potentially, I don't want to say endangered. A reservoir can't be endangered, but climate change impacting them.
Yes.
And he basically talks to these people that are really impacted by real day problems. And I just think he's incredible.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's interesting that he's like a peace photographer. When you said that first, I was like, peace as in like art pieces.
So his
but, like,
book,
actual peace.
His book is called A Piece of My Mind, spelled Peace. Yeah.
And it's like a photography book of all the pictures that he's
a little bit
taken.
of journalism and just about why he's there, why he's photographing them.
Wow, that's so cool.
Who I actually met at Rutgers.
Oh, you met that photographer at Rutgers?
He did a presentation at Rutgers, and I like latched onto him. I loved him. And then when I found an opportunity at the end of a year, I reached out to him. I was like, hey, like, I met you 6 years ago.
Yeah.
What are you up to? And do you want to come on MSNBC to talk about your project?
So cool.
Yeah, just because I loved it.
Wait, that's amazing. I love how you're like, I think you're interesting. One day I'm
Not
gonna
like
get on
latch
the show.
on to them.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about how you got the gig working as a booking producer for the Olympics.
Yes. So also tied to Rutgers. Big Ten schools have this live sports games that aren't on like the Big Ten network or on Fox News, that are on BTN Plus, are run by students. So I started doing that in college, and so I worked wrestling matches, soccer. I don't think I ever did swimming. Well, of course I didn't do swimming. I was actually in the
You were actually, yeah.
Soccer, gymnastics, and basketball, anything. And so when I was applying, and I got the interview, which I interned at NBC, so that was probably helpful. But when I got the interview, they were asking about that experience, and I was like, yeah, I mean, I've worked almost every sport that you can. And so that's how that happened. But then, and when you work the Olympics, they're all freelance gigs. So 3 weeks, you come in, they pay you, you leave. And so then I got a full-time job, and my manager, just the timing-wise, I couldn't do it the first year I got offered it. That was Tokyo. Okay. And then they reached back out to me the following year and asked if I would come for 2022 Beijing. I was like, heck yes. And I had a new manager, so I asked them, and they were like, of course, like, go ahead. Yeah. We had enough like backfill on the team that it was okay. It was also very much in limbo, as media and TV shows always are. So it worked. So I went and worked the Olympics, and now it's something that I will never give up if I can help it.
What was that experience like? Like, are you just in this like big media room with all these other people that are like booking people or like producing the show?
Yeah, so everyone's kind of divided. Like, there are different control rooms for each sport even. So there are these tiny little nooks of control rooms, and then there's the big control rooms for like USA and all the different NBC Sports and the Today Show, and like there are all these different control rooms. And then the first year I did it, I was in this big room, and we were just watching a million feeds come in all at once. And then the second year, or 2024 for Paris, I was in this little control room, and I was on the friends and family team. So all the athletes, like, if they'd interview it, like their parents would get interviewed or what have you. Snoop Dogg sits next to Simone Biles' mom. Like, we had to coordinate that.
Yeah.
I was sitting in a control room basically the whole time, because there was always a sport on that we had a camera on one of the parents. So I was sitting like in the back row of a control room with my little headset, like texting the parents, making sure everything was right, and making sure that the control rooms all knew that we had a parent on the camera. So sometimes I'd have to like run around a whole NBC Sports like thing, finding this one specific little control room, like a rowing control room, and be like, hey, cut to this camera, like, when you can.
Because the parents are there.
Yeah. And sometimes, like, and it's fairly new, the whole friends and family aspect. It never really started until COVID. Just because everyone was there. It was in person. There wasn't really a need for it. And then it turned into COVID hits. Hey, like, who's at home? Let's get you on, like, talking to them after you're competing. Stayed that way for Beijing, and then for Paris it was coordinating parents getting mic'd up on the like in person. It was people at home. It was really anything involving the friends and family.
Yeah. And when you realized, well, actually walk me through how you found out the moment you like actually won an Emmy.
Oh my gosh.
And then when you got the Emmy, like when you opened the box and you're like, holy shit, I literally won an Emmy.
It's massive too.
Yeah.
It's huge. But so I didn't know if it was real at first. Like, I got this email from like it was an official email, but it was kind of just random. It was completely out of the blue, because so many people work at NBC Sports. So like it was a team effort, like multiple people won one, right? And so I got this email, and first I forwarded it to my mom and my boyfriend, and I was like, you think this is real? And they were like, oh, you might not want to click that link, like, just to be safe.
Oh.
So then I forwarded it to my boss at the Olympics, and I was like, you think this is real?
Yeah.
And he was like, I mean, I think so. Yeah, I think it is. So then I was saying there. So then I called my mom, and I'm like, I think this is real. This is nuts. And I do the same thing, and then I switch. I called my boyfriend, because what are you going to do? And I clicked on it, and it was real.
So what did it say? Like, hey, you won an Emmy.
Basically, it's like, you won an Emmy for outstanding live sports coverage with NBC Sports for the 2022 Beijing Olympics.
Oh my god.
It was so generic. That's why I was like, am I imagining things?
Yeah.
Is this actually here?
And then you clicked the link and you filled out like your name and everything so that they could carve in your name.
Yep.
And then they just shipped it to you.
Yep.
And then how do you have like a box? Was it?
It's a massive box. So it's a big box. It's heavy too. And like, so I'm sitting there, and my boyfriend had moved in with me at that point. So I'm sitting like crisscross applesauce on the floor, like looking at this, and I'm looking at him, and I was like, do I open it? Like, what do I do with this?
You're like, something's gonna pop out.
And it was just huge. It was just, and it's not that big, but like in my mind, like, it was like heavy too.
Yeah.
It was like, holy crap, this is real.
That's so
like, this
surreal.
Is a thing. And now my boyfriend like puts it on display in the center of our apartment.
I mean, hell yeah. If I would have Emmy, I would be putting it everywhere. I would be taking pictures of that, framing it on the walls.
It's so funny. And it's crazy because it's like, it was such a big team. Like, it was such a team effort. And so sometimes I'm like, it's not that big of a deal, but it's still so cool.
I mean, how many people can say that they have an Emmy in their place? Like, they won an Emmy.
I know. It's wild.
I think it's so small.
It's wild.
So,
it's wild.
That's amazing. Like,
Thanks.
you are Emmy, like, literally Emmy-winning producer.
I know. That's
Insane.
really helped with the new business.
Oh, my God. Well, hey, we should talk about that. So, tell me about, like, how you decided to transition into, like, more of a freelancer role. Like, what prompted it?
Yeah, so, I mean, media landscape's weird. As we all know, it's changing. Podcasts, YouTube, everything's growing. Broadcast TV is not really going up very much. And then, so MSNBC is under NBC Universal, and this whole like news of they're spinning off MSNBC and E and USA, like the broadcast channels. And so that happened, and it's not super, doesn't make me feel super secure in my job, which is fine. And they actually just went through a lot of layoffs, and it's sad, and a lot of the media industry is. Honestly, I was a little burnt out, but like I still loved the job. I was back on the 11 p.m. show, so I'm working until midnight. If I'm in the office, I get home at 1:30 in the morning. I've been doing it for 4 years. I got one contract opportunity that could keep me afloat financially, and I just ran with it. Like, it was so unexpected to my team. I went in and I said, like, hey, I'm giving my 2 weeks. And they were like, what are you doing? Like, where are you going? And I was like, just me. Like, I have a client, and I'm going to try and get more clients.
Wow.
That's just me. And they were like, are you sure about this? And I was like, yeah, I'll be okay. Like, and if I'm not, I'm not. And I figure it out.
Yeah. I mean, hey, you figured it out.
Yeah. It's only been 2 months, but 2.5.
The first, like, when you put in your 2 weeks, you're like, holy shit, okay, now I gotta, like, put my head down and, like, maybe not just have one client, but maybe try to get more clients. Did you have to do outreach to other people, or, like, people that you had connected with as you were a booking producer that you reached out to?
Yes, so a little bit of both. So one of my, I call him, he's my PR baby in my mind. He's my first client. Like, I booked him on MSNBC before. I thought he was a great guest. We had him back a few times, and he had never really been anywhere else. So I reached out to him. I was like, hey, I really like you. Again, with the, like, latching on to people. I was like, hey, I really like you. I want to work with you. I'm going off on my own. Like, let's figure it out if you want to.
Yeah.
And he was like, okay, like, sure. And so that came from that. And then I sent out an email blast to 350 people that I was leaving.
Oh,
all of my connections over the years.
Wow.
Yeah. And I got a decent amount of leads from that.
Yeah.
One major one, and then one word of mouth, and everyone just started talking. And yeah, that's basically how it happened. Some referrals, some people that I just really liked, like the piece photographer. Actually, I reached out to him and I was like, "Hey, I'm going off on my own. Like, let's figure something out." And he's one of my clients now. And
oh, awesome.
Yeah, but he's been traveling, again, I have a thing with, I find someone I like and I love, and I just keep them.
Yeah. Why do you think you gravitate towards certain people and you're like, I just want to like work with you or like do something with you versus like having a more spread out like network?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's just an energy or a vibe I get. Just similar thoughts and whatnot, and sense of humor. I'm probably much more casual working with me than a full-on PR firm. I mean, just for the fact that it's just me. But also, like, I'll text them and be like, oh my gosh, did you see this? And we'll just go back and forth about what's going on in the world. And it's like, we'll be just having a conversation. I'm like, you should go on TV to talk about that. Like, let's set that up. But it's basically just people that kind of align with me. Yeah. And they have similar work ethics, and they trust me, and I trust them.
Yeah. I wanted to ask about your passion for the news, since you've worked in it for a couple of years now, and then also with news, I feel like there's this aspect of storytelling as well. So what has drawn you to work in this field?
Yeah, to be completely honest, I just kind of landed there at first. It was lucky. I was never a news junkie. And then it was just so thought-provoking, I think, that made me want to stay in it. I mean, politics are never fun. It's just, especially in the world that we're in now. But I also find it fascinating. Like, why do you believe what you believe? Like, why do you believe what you believe? Like, where did you come from? Like, something makes you believe what you believe.
Yeah.
And I like figuring that out, too. So, yeah.
I mean, it's so many things. It could be where someone grew up, where they were born, what their upbringing was, family, career, life moments, everything can shape a person.
Yep.
I was actually just talking about this with my brother because he like came to visit me for a week in New York and stayed with me, and we were talking about how yes, we're similar, but we're also so different because we also grew up in the same environment, but he's like more of a traditional thinker. I am not like that. So it's just interesting to see, even though we grew up in the same way, how we have completely different perspectives.
Right.
So there's so much that goes into like how like human perspective.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. I find people fascinating.
Yeah. Humans are fascinating.
It's
people.
crazy.
Oh my God. The things that humans will do, either the most amazing things or the most terrible things or anywhere in between.
Yeah. And what goes through everyone's heads. Like, oh my gosh, if I could read minds, it would be dangerous, one. But it's fascinating.
Yeah. Well, to that, I wanted to ask you about with politics and the current state of the media and the landscape that we're living in. I think a lot of people right now don't know who to trust, what they can trust, what information is actually accurate, because there's so much misinformation, disinformation, truth, lies, everything in between. What, if you had any advice for a person that is trying to be more like media literate in terms of looking at different news resources or XYZ, what advice would you give them so that they can help form their own opinion? Yeah.
I never get your information from just one place. They could be the greatest reporter, greatest anchor at all, but there's still a human factor. There's still someone's thoughts can sway which way they write. And that's human. But there's also something to getting your information from people who grew up in different places, from getting your information from so many different people who think different ways and who are reporting on facts. And there's a difference between numbers and how they're presented. So you can see a graph that like the numbers may just be different, where it looks like the line goes straight up, but it's going up by like 0.1 percentage points each time. So it's really not that much of an escalation. So it's like, actually do your own research, talk to different people. I mean, if you only get your information from one source, you're only getting one source's information. It sounds silly, but it's true. And there's so many different things. People hear different things. Reporters talk to different people. There's just so much that goes into writing a story, that a story about one topic can be different from different people, and you just take in all the information that is out there and make your own thoughts from it and decide how you feel. And it doesn't mean you have to agree with anyone. It doesn't mean you have to disagree with anyone. It just means that you think about something one way, and hopefully everyone's open to having a conversation.
I think with where politics has gone, it feels like a very divisive landscape and very black and white, or you pick a side. There's no middle ground. But the thing is, especially with humans, there's so much gray area, not just in politics, with everything that you always talk about, because again, we have to think about human perspective, and there's so many things that shape a human to think certain things. So we can all have like certain values that are similar, but our perspective on those values or topics that we see can all be so vastly different. It's like wild. So I completely agree. Reading multiple news sources, that's what I do. It can be overwhelming sometimes. I think like there has to be a balance of like how much information that you're consuming, because I know like a lot of my friends, when they're like scrolling through the news or reading up on information, you can almost get like news fatigue or like get really depressed from reading everything. So like having a little bit of balance. And it's setting boundaries. I mean, we talk about setting boundaries for yourself as a human. Like that has to do with the news you consume too. Really doing what's best for yourself, but still being empathetic for others is kind of where I see it. And it's hard because people can be mean, and people can be so it's so black and white, and people can just be stuck. And you hope that people intake information and are empathetic as well, but you also can't change anyone. You have to believe what you believe, and don't get so fixated on someone else. Just because that just brings you down. I think. And I also think people just need to be more open to listening and learning from other people's perspective. Because sometimes if you're so strong in your own opinion, when you're talking to someone else, it can almost feel like you're talking to a brick wall, or when they're talking back at you, you're not actually listening or taking that in. So coming in with like, yes, you have this opinion or this perspective, but also being open to learning from others. I think is a big thing. It's all about an open mind. I love that. Well, Lauren, first, I want to say thank you for hopping on this podcast. I like to end every single podcast episode inspired by my favorite TV show, Criminal Minds. Actually, it is one of my favorite TV shows, but maybe not the most favorite TV show. But in Criminal Minds, they always start and end each episode with a quote. So I was scouring the internet for like quotes specifically focused on media, and I love this one so much. So I'm going to read it to you. The quote is, "If people in the media cannot decide whether they are in the business of reporting news or manufacturing propaganda, it is all the more important that the public understands that difference and choose their news sources accordingly." And that was by Thomas Sowell, who is, I think, an American economist. So that's a great quote. That's the quote.
That's true.
Thank you, Lauren, for joining and hopping on the podcast. I love talking about the media, and I feel like since we're both journalism majors, you can kind of geek out on that a little bit. But I love your insight. Good luck with your new company.
Thank you.
And endeavor, and I wish you the best.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Yay!